To my worthless daughter, live on your own from now. Is this a joke? What does this mean? Returning from school, Jessica found her house completely empty, with only a note left behind. Are you trying to tell me that I am no longer needed? Ever since I was young, my parents only doted on my beautiful older sister, but I never imagined they would abandon me like this. Struggling to hold back my tears, I headed to my grandmother's place. I wish I had never been born. Don't say such things. They made the foolish choice to abandon you. They will regret it. My grandmother accepted me, and from then on, we lived together until I became an adult. Hey! We're here to pick you up. In the evening, when I expected just a regular visitor, it turned out to be my parents who had abandoned me. I was infuriated, but for some reason, Grandma let them into the house. What do you mean? As I was thinking this, my parents started to say something outrageous. My name is Jessica and I am an IT engineer currently living with my grandmother. I enjoy living with my grandmother every day and my work is going well. Although I have nothing to complain about, a turning point in my life came about 5 years ago. Before that, however, he had led a life that was not a happy one. Mom, I want a new game for my birthday. Huh? Why would I buy you a game? Know your place. What? Why? But what about sis? You bought her a video game for her last birthday, why can't I have it? You should look at yourself in the mirror before saying such things. You're not cute like her and have no future prospects. I don't want to waste money on you. I was still very young, and these words from my mother were just hurtful to me, as if she was simply telling me that I was not pretty enough, but now I know how much of a disqualified mother I am. But not only my mother, but also my father had the same idea, so my sister was the only one in the family who would take my side. I'll lend you my game, and let's go buy a new cartridge together. I'll help with the money, too. But why do Mom and Dad only say mean things to me? I haven't done anything wrong. I always try to be good. Right. I don't like what our parents are doing either, but I'll always stand by you. As I grew up, I began to question my parents' treatment of me and wondered why I was the only one who had to do this. My sister is doted on, so why don't they give me any love at all? Grandma lived nearby, and as soon as I realized I wasn't getting love from my parents, I frequently visited her. Grandma lived nearby, and once I realized I wasn't receiving love from my parents, I started visiting her frequently. I'm back again, Grandma. Me too. I thought you two might come today, so I prepared some treats. Wow. Grandma, you're like a mind reader. My grandmother lost my grandfather several years ago and now lives alone. I know she must be lonely living alone, but she was really happy when my sister and I went to visit her, and my sisters and I had the most fun when we played at our grandmother's house. And unlike my parents, my grandmother never separated me from my sister and I. It was the only space where I could feel at home and not close my heart to her. How happy I would have been if they had been as kind to me as my grandmother was. Many times I thought that and actually talked to her about it. Have your father and mother's attitudes changed? Yes, it's okay now. Thank you, Grandma. When I talked to my grandmother, she probably talked to my parents. That night, I was scolded by my parents. Don't talk about your family outside. I remember being scolded so and made to reflect on it all night as punishment. It was a traumatic experience, and since that time I have come to understand that a person's character is something that never changes. I want to live with my grandmother, not with my parents. How happy I would be if I could live with my grandmother. I think that was all I could think about at the time. Then one day. Hey, I'm going on a trip for 2 nights and 3 days. You stay here alone and look after the house. What? You're not taking me with you? Why waste money taking you? It's useless spending on someone like you who has no prospects. I don't really want to travel with my parents. Even if I went with them, they would leave me alone and I wouldn't have any fun. I knew that very well, and it wasn't that I wanted them to take me there because I wanted to have fun. But if they leave me alone, how will I live with myself for 3 days? I was only 10 years old at the time, and I couldn't cook. I've never even done housework. It's just too insane to leave my 10-year-old child behind when we go on an overnight trip. They have no responsibility as parents, and it's over. But even as a 10-year-old, I knew that it was futile to ask for parental responsibility and common sense from someone who would make a distinction between sisters and change 180 degrees in the way they love kids. Grandma. I've come again. Sorry for always coming here. Welcome. Are you alone today? And you have a lot of luggage. My dad and mom, they took my sister with them on a trip and I have to stay home by myself. But I can't cook dinner or do anything. Can I stay at my grandma's house? When I said this, my grandmother opened her mouth wide in surprise. It's no wonder. Where are the parents who leave their 10-year-olds to go on vacation? Maybe if I call the police or the child support center, my parents will end up like this, but then what will happen to my sister? I didn't want my parents to be in trouble, I just wanted to be happy. That's why I didn't want any more big problems to happen because of me, and I think my grandmother probably scooped up my feelings about that. If you ever have a hard time, you can always come to Grandma. I'll always be there for you. Thank you, Grandma, but I'm just fine with you being here, Grandma. For the next 2 nights and 3 days I was able to forget about my parents and have a good time. When I wake up in the morning, breakfast is prepared and someone is there to eat it with me. Usually, I would have to eat it alone because there would be a pastry or a lunchbox from the grocery store on the table. When I finished eating, there is a grandmother who does the housework with me and goes to the park with me. That alone made me really happy. I have someone who cares about me. When I went to visit my grandma at her house, I got the same feeling, but by staying there for 2 days, that feeling turned into something bigger. I'm home. Huh? I thought you ran away from home because you got sick of it, but you came back. You didn't have to come back. Hey, Dad and Mom, that's really terrible. I feel sorry for her. You don't have to worry about such a badly made little sister. You are a promising girl and you should worry about her. I left and they didn't worry about me at all. When I returned home, my parents had already gone home. My parents had told me to stay home, so I thought they would be angry at me for leaving the house without permission, but the reply from my parents was appalling. I had already lost all feelings for my parents. I would grow up fast and leave this house soon. After I left home, I would insulate myself and live on my own. That's what I had come to think. However, one day when I turned 15 years old, that day came unexpectedly. When I came home from school, I found the house empty, with only a letter left behind. To my daughter, who is a failure, from now on she can live on her own. No. What in the world is going on? I don't think it was a letter left behind. There was only one line, you're a failure, and from now on, you'll have to live on your own. I don't understand what this means, I don't understand it at all. Where have my parents and sister gone and what are their plans? Are they just going on a long trip? Or have they really abandoned me? Many speculations crossed my mind, but there was only one answer that made sense. She took my sister and abandoned me. That was all I could think of. How could they do this? Without saying anything to me, this is impossible. If it's a trip, there is no need to move the furniture in the house. The fact that it is all gone means that I have moved. I knew from a young age that they didn't need me. But now that I was all alone, I felt like I had a huge hole in my heart. Even if there was no bond or warmth there, I had a place to return to. I had my parents, even if they didn't talk to me, I had my sister. I didn't like my parents, but I guess somewhere in my heart their presence kept my spirit alive. Tears naturally came to my eyes and I felt despair for the life I was about to lead, but there was only one person I could rely on now. I quickly made my way to my grandmother's house. Grandma, please help me. What happened? Come inside first. Grandma said that, letting me into the house, soothing me as I was on the verge of tears. It's like my mom and dad moved away with my sister. They didn't say anything to me. This is the only thing left behind. What am I supposed to do? I said this and handed my grandmother the letter my parents had left for me. The moment she saw it, she crumpled up the letter and hugged me tightly. The warmth of my grandmother's body seemed to seep into mine, and I cried aloud. Grandma, why? I wish I had never been born. It's okay, it's okay. Forget about those heartless people. You are my treasure, a person with more worth living than them. So don't lose yourself. My grandmother comforted me, and I managed to find a place of comfort. Then I went to live with my grandmother, and my second life began. Sorry I'm late, Grandma. It can't be helped, you're busy. Let's take a break, shall we? Dinner is ready? Yes. In the beginning, I think I lost my smile for a while because the fact that my parents would abandon me was weighing on my mind. But my grandmother continued to be kind to me, and gradually I was able to regain hope for my life. It was truly terrifying to think what would have happened to me if my grandmother had not been there, and I felt from the bottom of my heart that I could never be thankful enough for that. And there is one more thing I have to thank my grandmother for. I just solved the last error and published it online. I made a pretty decent brain training app. You should try it, Grandma. My grandmother, who knew I had been good in science and math since high school, saw my talent and introduced me to one acquaintance. It was a junior employee of the company where my grandmother used to work, who is now an engineer. He was good friends with my grandmother, and they still have tea together once a month. I learned programming from him and became immersed in his world. It's very well done. Amazing. Right. It took over 3 months. I worked really hard. With this, you might start an IT company and become wealthy. You think logically and can plan ahead. It's just an app made by a beginner, though. You may think so, but my eyes, having lived 3 times longer than you, see your success. I really enjoyed my new life with my grandmother, and I got hooked on programming, which I started learning on the first computer I touched. I had never even been given such an environment before, so I was open to how much fun there was in the world. It turned from a hobby into a skill, and by the time I graduated from high school, I had grown as a programmer to the point that I had created and released several web applications. I decided to live as a programmer and did not go to college. If I wanted to live as an engineer, I could have gone to a college with an engineering department, but I had some knowledge and I decided to get a job. That job was with a company owned by a friend of my grandmother's who taught me programming, and after working there for 2 years, I went out on my own. I'll work hard. Thank you so much. I won't let you down, Grandma. I believe you can do it. I'm rooting for you. My grandmother provided all the funds for my independence, and I worked hard to the death to get the company off the ground. As a result, the system I created was adopted by a major company, and the company grew rapidly. After that, I began to think about management not as an engineer but as the president of the company, and with the help of my grandmother, I was able to quickly grow the company into one of the most famous in the industry. One day in such a life. I worked until late that night, and when I came home, I saw 2 shoes of a strange man and woman at the entrance. I wondered if they had a visitor. Thinking so, I went to the living room, and to my surprise, there they were sitting, the hateful people I did not want to remember. Oh my! It's been a while, hasn't it? I saw you on TV the other day. You were there, weren't you, like a commentator, a young CEO everyone's talking about? I was surprised to find out you were running a company. There they were, my parents, who had abandoned me 5 years ago and were gone. Both of my parents were smiling, but my grandmother was looking at them with a glare. No wonder, what do they want after 5 years? It's as if they were people in a hurry to get back to the dump when they realized there were valuables in the trash they had thrown away. What do you want now? What business do you have with the people you threw away? Actually, we're in a bit of a financial bind. We tried to get your sister into a talent agency, but we were scammed. Your sister has closed off her heart, and we're left with debts. Could you possibly help us? You abandoned me, and now you come to me for help when things go bad for you. I won't let you say that you have forgotten what you did to me 5 years ago. What I have been through since you people abandoned me, how much my heart has been broken. No, it did not start 5 years ago. From the time I was a little girl, you abused me as a failure and never gave me any parental love. If they thought what they did was forgivable, they were wrong. Can you stop belittling people? You're talking as if I'm some kind of tool for your convenience. No, it's not like that. You were close to Grandma, so we thought it'd be better for you. You think saying that excuse is abandoning me? How dare you ask for such shameless favors after neglecting your responsibilities as parents? I emotionally yelled at him to let out all the resentment I had been building up. You show up at my door and ask me to help you with money? I wish you'd stop belittling people. I don't have a dime to give you people, and if I had that kind of money to spare, I'd rather spend it on my grandmother. But why, Grandma? Why did you let these two in? I wanted them to understand what they did. Abandoning one daughter and using the other as a tool, unfit as parents, deserving hatred. I wanted them to feel that firsthand. I see. My grandmother hated my parents as much as I did, so I wondered why she invited these two people into her house, but that's what she meant. Certainly, considering their first words when I walked in, I don't think they felt any guilt towards me at all. It's a bit brazen, but I guess that's the way they are. That's why they wanted me to realize what kind of situation they were in. But perhaps it had that effect, because the leeway that they had just shown was gone, and their expressions were beginning to cloud over. We might have made you feel lonely, but we came back for you in the end. And we raised you until you were 15. You can't say we owe you nothing? Enough with the patronizing talk. What have you ever done for me? You stole my childhood, and yet. I'm sorry, but whatever you two say, I'm not going to reach out to you. Why don't you just make sure you suffer until the very end? I've suffered from you too as well, and it's all your own fault. That's right, so leave now. If you come near this house again, I won't stay quiet. Wait, we're really in trouble. We can't even afford to live properly. Yes, that's right. Your sister is suffering too. You used to love your sister, didn't you? If my sister is suffering, I'll help her, but not you two. The two of them made excuses to the end and seemed to be trying to get me to help them somehow, but I think they realized that my grandmother and I were serious. They didn't say anything more and kept quiet. However, my grandmother kicked them out and they were reluctant to leave, and I finally felt better. That was a surprise, seeing Mom and Dad here. I was surprised too, but with their history, I knew they'd come about money. I never expected them to be so shameless. You are so right. I am not their tool and I don't care if they want me to help them now. In fact, I'm even refreshed to know that I'm suffering. Considering how much I suffered as a child, my parents' suffering is nothing. I wonder where my sister is now. What she's doing. I hope she hasn't been ruined by our parents' misguided ambitions. About your sister. I can actually contact her. Would you like to meet? My grandmother told me that so I could blow it off. I really didn't care about my parents, but there was one thing that bothered me a little. It was my sister. I didn't have any contact information for her, and I didn't know where she was or what she was doing. But my sister, unlike my parents, was really worried about me, and more importantly, she was on my side. As I told those two, if it was just my sister, I would do whatever I could to help her. That's how much I appreciated her. I wonder where my sister is now, and what she's doing. I hope she hasn't been ruined by the effects of those two over-expecting her to go down a path she didn't want to go down. About your sister, actually, I can get in touch with her. Would you like to meet her, if it's okay with you? Hearing my grandmother say those words, I couldn't help but ask her back. I can get in touch with my sister. What in the world does that mean? What do you mean you can get in touch with my sister? How is that possible? Just recently, I got a call. She had a cell phone, so she had my contact information. She told me not to say anything to you. I didn't know why she told grandmother not to say anything, but anyway my grandmother set up the place with my sister. My grandmother didn't give me any details and I don't know what is going on. But I get to see my sister for the first time in a long time. I was so happy and a little nervous that I couldn't sleep. And on that day. It's been so long, sis. Have you been doing well? Well, I'm doing well. After the sudden move, things were a bit of a mess, but I'm on my own now, and I'm able to spend some quality time without my family. I was relieved to see that my sister seemed to be doing better than I expected, but it seems that she had a pretty terrible life while I was living with my grandmother. Right after they moved, she began her full-fledged performing career, and she was not allowed to study properly. She was forced to take dance and singing lessons, and eventually even learn to act in a play, and her days were filled with fatigue from all the things she didn't want to do. Well, I didn't want to do these things, and the guy from the entertainment agency that those two were friends with was a scam artist. Eventually the money ran out and everything went back to normal. So I took advantage of that and left home and started living on my own. It was tough at first because I had no one to rely on, but now I feel like I'm somehow making a living. I guess our parents really thought of us sisters as their tools. I agreed with my sister from the bottom of my heart, and I was right not to offer any favors and not to help. What are you doing now for a living, sis? I'm working part-time to make ends meet, and I'm thinking of going to college. I need to get a job to survive in the future. I don't know what I want to do, so I haven't decided on anything yet. Why don't you try working at my company? If you're interested, I think I can train you from scratch to become an engineer. My sister was always on my side when I was little, and I was saved by her. That is why I wanted to do whatever I could do for her now. That was how I felt. I had made up my mind that even if she refused, I would support her in a different way. She gladly accepted my proposal. She then went to work for my company, and in less than a year, she had grown into a fine engineer. She is still contributing to my company as a major asset. Family is not something that can be explained only by blood ties. I don't consider my parents family, and I have no intention whatsoever of helping them, no matter how dire their situation may be. That is because of what my parents have done to us, and family ties do not exist there. A family is someone to whom you would give your all and still be willing to do something for that person. I will always cherish my two family members, my grandmother and my sister, and I will always